I mean, in today's world, doing the simple things is more difficult.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Exactly.
But if you see MS, he does the simple things. He does the obvious. He states the obvious, but he does them correctly. And that is why he is successful. I mean, Virat Kohli, the desire, the passion, is such an amazing... He's the best thing to happen to India in this decade.
Yeah.
I keep asking him sometimes, have you had kryptonite or something?
Thank you so much for this chat. If I had to come up with like a ratio of
He's lying, isn't he?
No. Of wisdom gained per minute spent.
Good job, I'm only on the third floor.
That ratio would be through the bloody roof. Through the bloody roof. But before we started rolling, we had a condition. I told Sir that if he enjoys the conversation, only then will he actually sign this book for me. So this is the moment of truth, the hour of reckoning. My heart is beating at the rate of knots. Will it happen? Will it not? Will it happen? Will it not? Hey guys, welcome to this episode with R Sridhar, the former fielding coach of Team India, who certainly does not need any introduction, but I might need an introduction, especially if you're new to my channel. My name is Anubhav Jain and I work as a sports presenter and event host, and it was during one of my shoots for Sony Sports Network that I met Sridhar Sir for the first time. And you know, कोई लोग ऐसे होते हैं जिनके साथ एक instant connection होता है, like love at first sight, like it is between the two of us, I'd like to think. Sridhar Sir के साथ एकदम वैसे ही था, and I just felt कि, you know, I have to get this man on my podcast, come hell or high water. A man who spent 7 illustrious years in the dressing room of Team India, working with the likes of MS Dhoni, Virat Kohli, Ravi Shastri and many others. In this chat, we spoke about what is it that makes some of the legends that I mentioned tick. What is so special about them, and what is it that you and I can extract in terms of lessons from these legends such that we can incorporate some of those lessons in our respective lives as well. Also, if you're as mad about sports as I am, and in case you also want a chance to rub shoulders with greats of the game of cricket as well as other sports, then let me tell you, I've got a workshop on how to become a sports presenter in India that's coming up very soon. Link to the workshop in the description, so do check it out for further details once you're done watching this episode. Cheers and enjoy. Sridhar Sir, I want to kick things off with a confession. So this was about 1.5 years ago. When I first got my hand on your book, Coaching Beyond, My Days with the Indian Cricket Team, I read it cover to cover. Since then, I've been champing at the bit to have a conversation with you about everything that you talked about in this book, because everything that you mentioned aligns with my interest. I think in a nutshell, I can say that you talked a lot about delving into the minds of these cricketers, these high achievers, and understanding what is it that makes them tick. And how exactly as a coach can you actually bring out the best in them. Exactly what piques my interest. That's one of the reasons why I'm drawn to sport. It's more about the sporting personalities, the psychology of sport, as opposed to like the technical aspects as much. So it's such a pleasure to be having this conversation with you.
It's a pleasure to be on the show, Anubhav. And since the time I met you, so there's something which always connected us, you know, whether we did shows on Sony or whether we had those conversations during our times off air. So that was great, and it's wonderful to come back and talk to you. And I'm really overwhelmed that you have read the book cover to cover, and there is some takeaways for you from it. And you talking about these modern day geniuses or experts in their own field. I think there is no mystery over their mastery.
100%. So you mentioned it's been a couple of years since we met each other. I have to say, since that time, you look 20 years younger, I look 20 years older. You surely have been drinking from the fountain of youth.
I'm not sure about the first, neither am I sure about the second statement. Okay, both are in my opinion not true. Definitely I've graded a lot more than what it was when I met you, but I grade a lot during my tenure with the Indian team.
long tenure from 2014 to 2021, 7 years, but those, like the experiences that you had during those 7 years, I'm pretty sure were probably more memorable, more enriching, more fulfilling than some of the experiences that people have in 7 decades. And I'd love to unpack some of those things. Sure. I know, you know, in a 45 to 60 minute conversation, we won't be able to do justice to it, but we'll try our level best. So starting at a very high level, before we get into specific examples of some of the athletes, some of the coaches that you worked with that you mentioned in the book, the likes of MS Dhoni, Virat Kohli, Ravi Shastri and many others. At a very high level, sir, what do you think are the features, the attributes, the characteristics that high achievers possess that separate the men from the boys, the pros from the amateurs? Of course, technical ability is one of them, but it surely has to be more than just technical ability that some of these champion cricketers or champion athletes have.
Absolutely. I mean, you're going to be quite amazed at what I'm going to say. And it could sound a little cliched as well, because you would have heard many athletes and coaches say the same. These champions, they don't do different things. They do things differently. And like I always say, magic or these magical movements is all about doing the small things correctly. Glory doesn't happen like that. It happens when you do the basics, when you do the small things correctly, time and again, over a period of years together, and then magic happens eventually. Let's talk about even turning up on time. I mean, today, if you turn up on time regularly, "Arey yaar, kya banda hai yaar, what a man yaar, he's always on time." I mean, turning up on time is something you're supposed to do every day, right? Even that is taken for granted. I mean, so when I tell the young kids of today that if you're on time, you're 15 minutes late. If you want to be a pro in any field of your choice, you should know that that extra 15 minutes wherever you reach gives you a head start over the others. You'll probably, in cricketing terms, you come 15 minutes early for practice, probably you'll do a little bit of your stretching, or you will do a bit of extra warm-up, or you'll have a conversation with the coach which nobody's around, and you have a very good conversation, you connect better, or you take stock of the conditions, the pitch, or something you get to do in those 15 minutes which will give you a head start over the others who come on time.
Exactly.
So I'm just giving you one example of coming on time, doing the boring things, doing the things when no one is watching you, still having the same discipline. All these things don't change. The field may change, whether it is sport, whether it is art, whether it is engineering, or whatever it is. Putting in the extra hours, doing the small things correctly, and being dedicated to what you do, and being disconnected from the result. These are the things which makes these champions.
Yeah. So you talked about so many things, and there were so many things that were coming to my mind. So I might just be rambling right now because of so much you mentioned in terms of substance. So a couple of examples came to my mind. You gave one example of how you can arrive 15 minutes early, where you can have a conversation with the coaches. You're more relaxed as opposed to scrambling in the 11th hour. I'm guessing as coaches, you notice some of these things that players do. It's not just that you're noticing them when they're in the nets bowling or batting, but you notice some of these other 1%ers that they're putting in. Cristiano Ronaldo, absolute extraordinaire, absolute phenom. He used to stay back after practice for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, just practicing free kicks. Free kick after free kick after free kick. That's how he became... Michael Jordan as well.
Last Dance, didn't you?
100%. Shivam Dubey, and this is like a personal example that I'm sharing. I was doing some work for CSK during the 2022 season of the IPL, working as an anchor cum producer. Shivam Dubey, during that season, he was getting troubled by the short ball. That became his Achilles heel, and bowlers were targeting that. So I saw him spending 45 minutes in the nets after the official practice session was over, just practicing short ball after short ball after short ball. And I think some of the things that you talked about gave rise to these examples in my mind. You mentioned detach yourself from the result. What that reminded me of is something that you mentioned in this book when you were talking about MS Dhoni.
As a leader. Right?
As a leader, exactly. So it's in the chapter where you talk about leaders, and of course you've dedicated quite a few pages to MS Dhoni. You said that MS Dhoni says that you should never want anything too much. His philosophy, you're speaking about MS, his philosophy was simple. When you want something too much or too badly, you get attached to it. Once that happens, emotion comes between you and what you are trying to achieve. His view was that if you want something too much, you should find a way of letting go of it and strike a middle path where you develop detached attachment. So I'd love for you to elaborate a bit more on this paragraph that I read out.
Look, that is just my perspective of what I saw of MS in those years when I was with the Indian cricket team. I mean, he was a wonderful guy to hang around with, just to listen, and the way he operated, and the way he spoke to the team as a leader, and there was just so much to learn from him. And the more I read the Bhagavad Gita now, which I'm going through, the more I read, the more I delve into it, the more I can actually now, in hindsight, connect MS Dhoni's leadership to the Bhagavad Gita, honestly. And he completely operated like that. And now I can just join those dots,
Yeah.
And detached attachment is part of that, right? Even with our own children, we ideally want to be detached attachment. So many times in my life, I've experienced, friends coming and telling me, oh, my son is not doing this, or parents approaching me, my son is not doing this is a big problem. But I say, it's okay, let him make a few mistakes, it's fine, let him make a few mistakes. It's fine. That's because I have a very detached attachment with that kid.
Right.
If my kid does the same thing, I would be as panicking as that parent who was at the time, because I'm overly attached to my kid. So that is something which I try and implement in my own life as well. That is one. But I remember very well, in one of the series in Australia, I think it was a World Cup semi-final, or it was a test match in Melbourne, I can't remember exactly where he came and said, don't want it too much. Do the basics right. Do what you have to do right. Don't want it too much. Do what you have to do right. And then the results will follow. The mantra of MS Dhoni's success is, I think, he never got affected, or the results never defined him, for him. For him, it is always the process, and he's spoken about it 1,000 times across different platforms, that it is the process. And if you see the team which he leads, you will see that, the process. He sticks to simple plans. Today, in today's world, doing the simple things is more difficult.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Exactly.
But if you see MS, he does the simple things. He does the obvious. He states the obvious, but he does them correctly. And that is why he is successful.
Yeah. Do you think we tend to overcomplicate things, especially because in today's age, as you mentioned, doing the simple things have become so difficult? It's also the age of big data. You have a lot of technical analysis, data analysis and whatnot that goes on. And sometimes those models work for certain sporting units, but maybe there might be times when there might be a double-edged sword as well, when maybe the answer might be simple, but then you end up overcomplicating things, which is something that MS never falls prey to.
100%, and many leaders are now realizing that as well. There is a limit to data now. It's only going to get even worse with so much of AI coming in.
Yeah.
And it's going to make the decision makers' life even more difficult. Yeah. I'm guessing it's supposed to be easier, but then the human element is also so important, especially in sport. Not just in sport, maybe in all walks of life, but that the human element is so important, which a leader like MS brings in. His room door is never locked; it's always open. People can just walk in anytime, fix a tea, or watch some cricket, or play a video game.
FIFA, I think he's a big FIFA junkie.
You play those war games, or he loves those war games, and he's just so open. He connects with people, and he's always watching cricket. So the data is all getting stored in his head. I think when it comes to sport, whether you are a coach or a captain, you are a leader, right, in your own way. The most important word is care. Care is something which you show to your athletes, and that is when you connect. You connect before you correct, right? So you connect with the athlete before you can ask the athlete something. Okay, why don't you try this? Why don't you do this? Or maybe talk to them about technique or tactic. But before that, you got to connect with the athlete.
Love that.
Which I felt I only achieved it very partially during my tenure with the Indian team. I could have connected much better with a lot of these superstars, because I always stayed a little aloof from them. I didn't make an effort, so probably I could have done that better.
But sir, it's a very important point that you bring up, because I'm just thinking about this through, say, the lens of human psychology. If I'm a player, and I think cricketers also, despite the fact that they achieve superstardom, just like any other human being, they're very insecure. But if they feel that, I'm backed by the coaches, and they feel a sense of psychological safety, then I think they'd be willing to run through brick walls for you or walk all over hot coals, versus being in an environment where they actually feel that they're not backed and they don't feel that sense of security. And so even though the ability might be there, but you might not be able to bring out the best in them if you don't quite back them to the hilt.
Yeah, it's a very difficult decision-making post. I know you're walking a very, very thin line, or a tightrope, whatever you want to call it. Because being in that position where you make the decision, well, I was not in that position, so I really cannot connect. But being an assistant coach or a fielding coach is an easier job. I don't have to take 1,001 decisions every day. I just have to go and suggest to the head coach, this can be done, this can be done, and the headache is for the head coach to make that decision and stand by it. But as a decision maker, and if you are connected with a high performance unit, or if you are in the business of winning, like you are in the IPL, or if you are with the international team, you have to win.
Yeah.
That is the bottom line.
It's a results business.
I mean, you're not in under 14 or under 16 age group where you're building a team and winning is not that important, but getting the kids to play the sport and connect and enjoy the sport and develop the skills becomes vital. But when you're coaching an IPL team or any international team, you are in the business of winning. But at the same time, you still have to build a culture. So what happens for that? You start from good habits. So habits, if done over a period of time, becomes a culture, and culture, if adhered over a period of time, becomes a tradition. So what every coach does is to develop a culture, but for that there needs to be certain habits that has to be inculcated into the team. So it's very difficult. You want to give security to a player by giving him those extra chances, by telling the player that yes, you are going to be playing the rest of the matches. But if that player is not in form, and if the team loses, I mean, you're going to be questioned.
Exactly.
Right, and because you got to be loyal to your country or to your franchisee or to your whatever board or whatever.
Exactly. As opposed to being partial to players, even when they might not be performing all that well.
Exactly. So you are hired there, you are there because you got to get results.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult decision making process, for an head coach. Yes, you need to build a culture, which each one does with their own philosophy, with their own vision. The philosophy of the coach has to match the philosophy of what the team is trying to achieve. And then the vision. At the same time, you need to give security to players. At the same time, you need to win games also, because you are in the business of winning. And I mean, if you are going to lose, your fan base is going to fall. If your fan base is going to fall, then people are going to question you, right? It's good. The finances are going to get affected. So it's so difficult to make those decisions. And when you take about 40-50 decisions a day, only 2 or 3 will come right. The others are going to be 50-50 or you may fail in the decisions you make. Like we saw it happening. A big decision did not go right for a big franchisee, right? It didn't go well. There was so much in the media, but they will back themselves to come back again. But that is what I'm saying. So I know as a leader, it's a very tightrope walk to give security to players, at the same time give the results to the owners.
Exactly, because you have to be radically honest with the players as well in the event that they aren't performing well. So I can't imagine how difficult a job that is.
Communication is the key.
100%.
Having good conversations in a non-threatening, non-judgmental environment is the key. For that, you have to connect better with the players.
So I was just about to ask you this question, and this example of Sir Alex Ferguson came to my mind. So a lot of players who succeeded under Sir Alex Ferguson's era, of course, players are very competitive. They want to play every single game. But sometimes when you're in a group of elite players, like Manchester United was at least back in the day, they've fallen from grace now. Even if you have the quality...
Worst position this year, number 8.
Number 8. So don't remind me of that. You don't seem to be a United fan, do you? I think you're gloating over my misfortune.
No.
But worst position.
I'm not a great follower of football.
But speaking of Sir Alex Ferguson, sir, the one thing that players who played under Fergie used to say was, even when I wasn't playing, of course I was aggrieved, I wasn't happy about the fact that I wasn't playing, especially if it's a big game. But what Sir Alex Ferguson did beautifully is, maybe on the eve of the match, he'll come down, sit with you one-on-one, he'll be like, hey son, how are you doing? And then he'll give rational reasons as to why Sir Alex thinks that maybe he wouldn't be the best fit for this game. But then he also gives the player an assurance that, you know what, there are these 2 games that are coming up a couple of weeks from now, you'll be playing them. So goes back to your point, which communication is key, such that the players have that clarity.
Yeah, I mean, at that position you're talking from, yes, you can do it. If you are taking and making all the calls, then probably you can definitely have those communications. But sometimes in elite cricket in India, you cannot promise players opportunities because you don't pick the team. The coach doesn't pick the team, right? So they have a bunch of selectors who pick the team and stuff. So when you have only $20 in your pocket, you cannot promise to give somebody $50 because you don't have it.
Exactly.
So that is the truth. You can only have the communication with those what you can do.
Exactly.
So the communication is very, very important. A lot of our coaches, successful coaches who donned the cap for the Indian cricket team now are extremely good in communication, and I mean they've been amazing with the players, and that is why Indian cricket is where it is today. Some of the Indian coaches are some of the best cricket coaches in the world today.
Yeah. And sir, speaking of some of the best coaches that have coached Team India, Ravi Shastri, you worked very closely with him. I absolutely love his personality. There are lots. He's the kind of person who divides opinion because he's a big, bold, strong, vocal personality. But I, for one, absolutely love him. Love the fact that he's one of those guys who has this takes no prisoners approach. You know, it's like winning at all costs. Very aggressive, will not be measured, will not be conservative. And he tells it like it is. Ravi Bhai. And of course, not to mention the sonorous voice that he has, which has become the voice of cricket in cricket commentary. You work so closely with him, sir. I mentioned some attributes and some characteristics that he possesses. But apart from that, what were maybe a couple more that really stood out about him that all of us, even if we don't belong to sporting backgrounds or sporting domains, can actually learn and pick up from Ravi Bhai?
I think attention to detail. His attention to detail is something that stood out. He may not come across as someone who's, has got so much attention to detail, but he is. He is very, very focused on the small things. He's always focused on doing the small things correctly. So, yeah, everything is correct, everything is perfect, he wants everything in order. But if you see him and if you talk to him, you may not see that that thing in him. And the other thing is observation skills. He's an extremely good observer. His observation skills are probably the best I've seen. The way he looks at a match, not just match, even if he's sitting in a restaurant and you're having a conversation with him, he sees things which I can never see. He observes. So that is why he's such a good decision maker. That's why he's such a shrewd tactician, because for a sportsman, decision making becomes very important. So, Johan Cruyff, the great ex-coach and in a former Barcelona, I mean, one of the greatest footballers ever, he said in an interview, if I run a straight 25-meter race with another player, he would beat me. But in a game, I will beat him to that point because I have made the decision before him. I have to get to that point.
So it's almost like he's got a head start because of his sharper cognitive abilities, which stems from him observing things very keenly. Wow.
So it's so important, like a jaunty Rhodes in fielding. You play a ball, and even before you think he's already there, even before you play, you're wondering, like all the Indian batters were wondering in the series, how does he know that I'm going to play it there? Because of his cognitive ability, like you said, because of his decision making, he's picking up stuff from the environment. Perception is so good that he knows the ball is going to play there. So you make a decision before you play that he has to move there. And you play and he's right there. Similarly, in football, it's so important. An average picture snaps, say like a footballer like Paul Scholes, in almost a second, 25 pictures his eyes click.
Yeah.
To observe what's going to happen.
Yeah.
3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps ahead. Exactly. So, he's going to pass it there, that's going to happen, that's going to come here, this is going to get, then I'm going to be here, They're constructing the whole play by observing what is happening.
And that's one of the reasons why people used to talk about Paul Scholes saying he's got eyes on the back of his head.
See, he's so excited when I talk about a Man U player.
But sir, we're talking about former players now. It goes to show that in terms of glory, we've gone this way.
So, I mean, he was an expert. He was an expert in it, in gathering information from what is available to him. And Ravi Shastri was like that. He used to gather great information and he used to bounce it off us. And I'm like, are we watching the same match or is he watching a different match? So, yeah, it used to be amazing. And that probably because he's trained as a broadcaster before he came to the position of Indian head coach, and he used to watch the match from a different lens, and that probably helped him. Or just being in the sport for more than 40 years as a player, as a captain, then as a broadcaster, and then coach, obviously you get better and better at it, right? So, yeah, these two qualities, I think, watching him closely, I tried picking up from him and inculcating in my own ability. So, one is attention to small detail, that is the key. 2 is trying to pick up information which is there all around you.
Beautiful. And sir, someone who complemented Ravi Shastri beautifully was the captain who played under the coach Ravi Shastri, Virat Kohli. I can go on and on about Virat Kohli, and I think we'll never end this podcast. And so I think I'll leave this task up to you. What did you observe about Virat Kohli? I think Virat Kohli was the person who came to my mind when you were talking about the boring basics. Someone who does the boring basics day in and day out, like at the gym every single day without fail. I was covering a series. This was an India series, India versus Bangladesh, December 2022. And there was an ODI that had taken place. The following morning, sir, after the match had taken place, grueling encounter, the following morning I was there early at the gym, just doing my my biking and my stretching and whatnot. Virat Kohli was the only figure, Virat Kohli and Vikram Rathore, the only two people who were at the gym, and Virat was doing his stretching, his recovery work, foam roller and whatnot, just so that he's recovered for the next match that takes place. And I didn't see anyone else there, and that just showed to me that, you know what, you have to do uncommon things to become uncommon, to become great. You can't be doing things that everyone else is doing and expect to be extraordinary.
That is everybody. Everyone is supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
But he's the only one doing it. It is the most simple thing. You have next day morning you have to come and do a soft tissue release.
Yeah.
He's just doing what
the boring basics, like you said.
Basics.
So other attributes, qualities about Virat Kohli that really stood
go on
out.
and on and on and on, and you can write another book. And then the whole world.
So we can co-author that book on Virat Kohli. Yeah.
So,
you of course have inside experiences. Yeah. I'm just looking in from the outside.
Yeah. I mean, he's such a legend. I mean, he's true modern day great, without a doubt of doubt what he is. And we saw it in this IPL, the way he's batted, the way he's fielded, the way he's conducted himself, the energy and the passion he's brought to the grounds, the way he's infused steel into his own team was amazing to watch. And I mean, Virat Kohli, the desire, the passion.
Also, I can ask you a more specific question actually, since you mentioned this IPL. You know, there were a couple of times when he, you could say, made digs at the commentators. Do you think Virat Kohli is the type of person, this is my hypothesis, I might be totally wrong about this. Again, you're an insider. Do you think Virat Kohli is the type of person?
It's almost 3 years since I'm out now.
But still, since he spent so many years with him in the dressing room, he performs best when he actually has a point to prove. You know, there's some people who perform best when they have a chip on their shoulder. Cristiano Ronaldo is one of them. So Virat also has that type of psychology, that type of mindset, almost as if say he lost like some of these naysayers, that probably wouldn't bring out the best in him.
I mean, he performs anywhere, anytime. That's a different story. He doesn't need anything. But like you said, it is like well documented fact that he performs best when someone, you know, when he has a banter or there is something, someone says something about him and he has to prove them wrong. That's well documented through his career, and that's why, you know, when you're sitting in opposite teams and when Virat Kohli is in your opposition, all team discuss only one thing: please leave him alone. Please leave him alone. Let him come. Let him smash us. No problem. So you just don't go and, you know, pick up an argument with him, or just don't kind of needle him. Otherwise, he will hammer us to an extent where we can't even come back into the game. So yeah, Virat things and. Just Virat things, unbelievable. He's a template for every athlete to follow, in my opinion, on and off the field, the way he works hard, his desire to improve. Not a desire to perform, his desire to improve.
And even now, despite the fact that he's got 75 hundreds and he's achieved 80 hundreds, achieved everything that the game has to offer.
I mean, he's such a leader. He's not a leader. Virat is a cult, I would say, literally. I would say that he's inspired millions of kids to pick up the bat and pick up the ball and just play the sport, not just cricket. Play any sport with his athleticism, with his devotion, which is now also out in the open for everyone to know. People know that with that kind of devotion, hard work and work ethics, you can probably excel in any sport. And he's just not inspiring millions of cricketers, but he's inspiring millions of kids to come into sport, whether it is soccer, whether it is badminton, tennis, cricket, or any Olympic sport, hockey or athletics or whatever. Every sportsman, every single kid in this country is inspired by him. He's the best thing to happen to India in this decade.
So speaking of Virat, one of the things that I read recently is that Virat was talking about how, you know, he gives it his 120% on a daily basis, like the drive, the discipline that you talked about, the bottomless reserves of energy that he carries with him on the field, despite the fact that, he has so many laurels under his belt. Virat mentioned that he realizes that the duration of the span of a cricketer's career is only 15 to 20 years at most. At most, if you think about it.
If you're super fit.
If you're super fit, right, at most. Like maybe a Sachin had 20 plus years, Virat might end up doing that as well. And so, because in the grand scheme of things, like say a person lives like 80 years, 90 years, in the grand scheme of things, 15 years, 20 years is actually a very small fraction of the life that you live. Even if you retired, say 40, you still have a good 40, 45, 50 years to live after that. Knowing that, it's over before you know it in the grand scheme of things, how can I not give it everything that I have such that, when I'm hanging up my boots, I am actually spent versus me thinking, I could have given more. So that could be one of the factors as well as to why every single day, even though maybe the game is lost to the opposition, but if he's fielding, he won't be half-hearted. He'll still give it his absolute all, whether diving, whether taking catches, even though the game might be lost.
I mean, you said it all, didn't you? I mean, you said a great point that it's only a very small part of your life, and what is the point in not giving it in everything? And that's what he said recently in an interview, right? So there's so much to pick up for us from that, just as persons, and that is what it is. And it's such a template, and it's unfortunate that not many can try and even, get inspired by it and try and use that template in their own personal life. And it's, to me, it's unfathomable, but he's from a different planet.
Exactly.
I keep asking him sometimes when I was the team, have you had kryptonite or something?
What does he say?
He just smiles. Are you from Krypton? You're surely not from Earth, man. You got this energy. From where does it come from? He just smiles and he's unbelievable. What an inspiration.
Absolutely. Metaphorically, he's colossal, bigger than any other universe, any other planet, any other solar system that currently exists. Another champion cricketer who's an inspiration for more reasons than one is Rishabh Pant. Of course, we all know about his comeback story, but you actually devoted a significant chunk of your book talking about Rishabh Pant, the champion that he is. And you mentioned this line that I absolutely loved, and this is one of your coaching maxims. And you mentioned this in the context of Rishabh Pant, and you were talking about how your coaching relationship or your working relationship with Rishabh Pant evolved over the years. Maybe, starting out, it wasn't as smooth as it was towards the end when you were finishing your tenure or midway through your tenure. And you mentioned that if they don't like what you coach them what they like. And you mentioned this in the context of Rishabh Pant. Can you elaborate a bit more on this coaching maxim of yours?
It's a simple coaching philosophy. They're not, if they don't learn the way you coach the way they learn. A lot of times we say some things and we think that we have done our job. But if the athletes are not picking it up, then you're not done your job. So you've got to change your style and suit it according to the requirements of the athlete. And with Rishabh, it was a great case. He was a young kid, just about a teenager, 20 years old, just after the Under-19 World Cup, made his debut. And, it was difficult for me to connect with him initially. It was a challenge because he had his bases, so we let it be. And then it took some time for us to build that trust and connect. And for that, I had to change my style of approach to coaching a little bit and understand where he is coming from, what he wanted. Sometimes you got to there's another coaching, what do you call it? Axioma, idiom. What is it? English
Maxim.
Maxim. कुछ बोला English में तो.
आपकी book से ही बोला.
So give them what they want till the time that they take what you give. So we started. I started changing my style of coaching. So less is more with an athlete like Rishabh. Less is more, and at that level. At a very elite level, more often than not, less is more. Especially when it comes to the technical side of it, or when it comes to the tactical, because they know exactly what they have to do, because they are geniuses, they are the champions. So I probably erred on the side of less is more. I probably went more towards more than less initially, and then I had to course correct somewhere midway, and I said, no, with this boy, less is actually going to work better. So then I made myself a little more redundant, and that is when actually the trick happened and he connected, and for the next 18 months it was great fun. with such a wonderful, exuberant and energetic athlete.
Very quirky as well. We love his personality.
Great personality. Wonderful to be, around, that energy and just infectious laugh that he's got. I'm so happy that he's back and playing and doing it better than what he was before. A better version, wiser.
Yeah.
Wiser.
He seems a lot more cool, mature, calm, composed, fitter as well.
I mean, I think he feels everything from now is a bonus.
Bonus, yeah. So he's got nothing to lose, almost. Yeah.
So I mean, it was an amazing period for me to learn as a coach. I evolved as a coach, trying to, learn how to do it with Rishabh, such a sweet guy. I evolved a lot as a coach because that was one of my biggest takeaways from that. Less was more. Most of the time, it was not that we were more on the face coaches, but with Rishabh even more so, and I really enjoyed that, and I thank him for that, for that period, because it was wonderful for me as a coach to learn a lot.
So, based upon this beautiful example that you talked about, sir, is it fair to say that at that level, when you're working with the likes of Rishabh Pant, MS Dhoni, Virat Kohli, other big names, man management becomes more important than technical coaching? At that level, if you're a coach, to be a good coach, you need to be a good psychologist or a good man manager?
You need to be a good human being to be a good coach. It's very important. You evolve. All of us make a lot of mistakes. And I've made many mistakes in my journey of 25 years as a coach. But now at this point in time, now I realize that to be an effective coach, you've got to be a good human being first. There should be no agenda, right? And your only agenda should be to help your team do well. That is what you're there for, obviously. You have to connect with the players much better. So, there was this period about 25-30 years ago when it was coach-driven. Sport was coach-driven. When coaching came into sport, late 90s, early 2000s, it was coach-driven. Coach took all the decisions, the coach told what to do, what not to do, and players and athletes accepted that. Not just cricket, any sport.
Yeah.
Then later on, maybe in the 2010s, that decade, 10 to 20, it became more athlete-driven.
Yeah.
So athlete-centric.
Exactly.
So the coach understood that he is not the center of the whole thing. It is the athlete whom you have to keep at the center of your planning. And so everything is athlete-driven. What the athlete wants, how much the athlete needs to do, where he needs to be successful in the match. So then coaches started learning, because that was the research saying. Research said that coaching has to be athlete-driven.
Yeah.
But I think now you're coaching a kid who's born in the late 2000s, Gen Z or whatever you call them, who don't even communicate in a sentence, or they just communicate in an emoji, right? They can't see a video which is more than 3 seconds long. If it's 7 seconds, your video is not seen. So in this generation, it's so important. Now there is enough documentation, research and studies saying you don't coach the athlete anymore. Coach the person behind the athlete. So it's moved. That's where coaching has moved.
Yeah.
So from coach-centric to athlete-centric to now
the human behind the athlete. Yeah.
The human behind the athlete.
Beautiful. Yeah. Because you talked about certain examples, or you talked about how coaching was different in the 90s and 2000s. Thinking about some of the top football coaches, maybe cricket coaches as well. You had these people who were strict disciplinarians. They had a very draconian approach that if you don't do this, you'll be fined this. If you don't do this, this will happen.
All that. Yeah.
And maybe it worked for that generation of players, where it kept them on their toes.
Absolutely.
But now I think because there's been like a seismic shift in the mentality of this generation that's coming up, a lot of people from this generation might have a disdain for authority. Who the hell is he to say that? There's absolutely no way I'm going to... Like the more he tries to actually get me to follow these rules of propriety, the more improperly I will conduct myself. Yeah. Because there were so many wisdom nuggets that you actually dispensed during this conversation, I wasn't able to take notes. I was taking mental notes, but after the conversation is over, I'm going to rewatch this 10 times, sir. Mazak nahi kar raha. Sir, to conclude, there are 3 rapid fire questions that I have. You don't necessarily have to be rapid. You can think out loud also. You can be semi-rapid if you want to. But these are questions that I like asking anyone.
My breath.
The first one is, because I'm a big foodie, that's why I'm asking this question. One food item that you could eat for the rest of your life without getting bored, assuming there are no health consequences whatsoever.
Rest of my life without getting bored, assuming that there are no health consequences whatsoever. Oh my God.
Like no impact on your energy levels, your health, your longevity, any of those things. One food item that you could eat for the rest of your life.
I think I can eat dosa for the rest of my life.
Dosa? Was that your breakfast this morning?
Yeah, actually I'm not, no. I prefer to eat it at home, but I think dosa is one thing I can eat for the rest of my life.
Dosa is one thing. You
dosa
cook?
And dal chawal.
You cook as well?
No.
You don't?
No, not my cup of tea. Nowhere near the kitchen. I don't even know where the kitchen is in my house.
Second one, sir. What are some of your go-to pick-me-ups? You know, you might be feeling down and out. What are some of the things, activities, people that you resort to that have like an uplifting effect on you when you might be feeling down in the doldrums?
Pick-me-ups for me could be a book.
Okay.
Could be good music, or could be just connecting with nature. Just by the water somewhere, or just listening to the birds somewhere early in the morning. All these are pick-me-ups.
You want to know my number one pick-me-up?
My God, ye to baap re.
That's the last one. This one's an interesting one. You can think about this. 3 dream dinner guests. If you could have dinner with 3 other people, anywhere in the world, anyone, people you know, people you might not know, dead or alive, whom would you pick? 3 dream dinner guests.
Arjuna from the Mahabharata. Then I'll come back to mortals now.
And why Arjuna, sir? Maybe you can give like a one-line reason.
Maybe he's just the greatest, isn't it? In everything. He's an epitome of everything, and he learned from the Lord himself, so much. Then tough one. Then coming back to mortals, I'd probably have one of my mentor coaches from whom I've kind of learned the philosophy of coaching. John Wooden, who's a great coach, basketball coach back in those days. He was coach of the century. And then I would probably have Mr. Narendra Modi.
So can I shamelessly barge in and be the 4th person? For you, not for the others. But Sridhar sir, thank you so much for this chat. Like, I'm not kidding when I said this. I think this is what I started with. There are so many things that you talked about in this book, so many personalities that you covered, so many nuggets when it comes to leadership, man management, coaching, that we could have multiple conversations. But I think in the 45 minutes or 60 minutes that we spent together, this was power-packed. If I had to come up with like a ratio of
lying, isn't he?
No. Of wisdom gained per minute spent.
Good job, I'm only on the 3rd floor.
That ratio would be through the bloody roof. Through the bloody roof. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'd like to think that you did as well. Or I'd like to hope that you did as well.
Well, I did, to be honest. I really enjoyed having a chat with you. It was lovely discussing those things, and I hope we had viewers engaged and hooked onto it. And it was wonderful talking to you, and wishing you all the best, Anubhav, for all your podcasts and all your journey in your most chosen career.
Thank you so much, sir. You said youngster, sir. Ab buda ho gaya. Oh. Not aging like fine wine the way you are.
I'm the curious case of Benjamin Button.
Exactly. In fact, if the sequel of that movie is ever made, you will be the protagonist. But before we started rolling, we had a condition. I told sir that if he enjoys the conversation, only then will he actually sign this book for me. So this is the moment of truth, the hour of reckoning. My heart is beating at the rate of knots. Will it happen? Will it not? Will it happen? Will it not? Is it happening?
To the youngster.
Thank you so much, sir. Really
Pleasure
means a lot.
Mine.
Thank you so much. Cheers, sir. Thank you so much.
All the best.
Thank you so much for having watched the entire episode. I think that's the least that you deserve, don't you? देखिए, Sridhar Sir का signature तो मिल गया. Now, if I end up getting your subscription as well, I'll honestly consider myself to be the luckiest person in the world. So much so that I might just end up stepping out and buying a lottery ticket. Lots of episodes that are currently in the pipeline. I recently filmed with Robin Uthappa, with Simon Dool, Vaibhav Arora, to name just a few. So subscribe to the channel to stay tuned for all the future episodes that are coming up. And last but certainly not the least, do not forget about the sports presenting workshop that I'm going to be hosting that's coming up for all you aspiring sports presenters. I'll see you again in my next video. Cheers.